Stand on the line if you've lost a friend to gang violence. Stay on the line if you've lost more than one friend. 3, 4 or more. From this moment on, the person you were, that person's turn is over.
One day, I got a dream. One day, we're gonna work it out.
Everyone has their own story. We're gonna write in these journals.
There's no place like this.
Hi, I'm Helena, and I'm Jayden, and we're from the Santa Barbara Middle School Teen Press, and we're here with...
Hi, I'm Erin Gruell with the Freedom Writers.
It's nice to meet you, Erin.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, if you could get the world to read one book that would convince everyone that violence is not the answer, which book would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I started having my students read The Diary of Anne Frank. So for me, that's a really special book. But my students were so inspired by Anne Frank that my students wrote their own book, and it's called The Freedom Writer's Diary. So I would tell every student to start with The Diary of Anne Frank first and foremost. And then if you're still curious about how to strive for world peace, then I recommend The Freedom Writer's Diary.
Our 6th grade has a class called Movies That Matter. They're exploring how movies and books tell the same story differently. Which do you think did a better telling of your story, the movie or the book?
Ooh, that's a great question. We've actually worked with Movies That Matter, and what we wanted to do when we made our book into a movie was to make sure that the words from the book and the actual words from my students were actually captured. So my students helped with the screenplay, they were on the set, there was 26 drafts of the screenplay that the screenwriter shared with my students, and he kept trying to get it just perfect. So I actually love the book better, because books are always better, but I think that the screenwriter really played as true to our story as can be. So we're really proud of the movie, and when students watch the movie, they see characters that were my students, and they hear voices that were my students. So always read the book first, and then watch the movie.
People say if you have no challenge or conflict, you have no story. What was a conflict or challenge when you were a kid, and how did it affect you as a person today?
That's a great question. Unlike my students who came from really dangerous backgrounds, I had a great childhood. I had great parents, I played sports, I was in all kinds of clubs. So I didn't realize the conflict until I actually walked into the classroom with my students and realized my students lived in a war zone, an undeclared war zone right here in California. And I think conflict makes you stronger. What they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I have 150 students, the Freedom Writers, who are survivors. They choose not to be called victims. They choose to be survivors. And so I think if you can learn from that conflict, and you can learn from some of those battles to overcome them. So as someone who didn't have atrocities myself, I learned a lot from my kids how to be resilient and to be courageous and how to fight the good fight.
One of your students who has become a lifelong friend, and could you tell us about them?
I sure can. I have 150 kids, and I see them all. I actually saw them today. We actually started a club called Toastmasters of Long Beach, and it's my original students. They're all grown up, and they teach teachers. Several of my students are actually here tonight, and we now work with teachers, and a lot of the teachers we work with are also here tonight to honor Muhammad. So I think one of the most amazing stories is I work with a young boy by the name of Trezor Rusesabagina, and his father was the courageous man in Rwanda who actually saved almost 1,300 people. So courageous, in fact, that they made a film about him called Hotel Rwanda that stars Don Cheadle, and Don Cheadle plays my student's father. And he's here tonight, and he and Muhammad are great friends. So maybe you guys can meet him as well. He's pretty cool. But all of my students have overcome incredible obstacles to be warriors, and they're warriors with words, not with weapons, and they're trying to make everybody have a voice, especially those that don't have a voice.
In our social studies class, we were reading a book about a lost boy of Sudan. He is dreaming about his new school in America when he says,
I hope they will have stories at my school. If they don't know how, perhaps I can teach them. It isn't such a hard thing. All you must do is say, once there was, and then let your hoping find the words.
If you were to tell a story about Erin with once there was a girl named Erin, where would you take the story as you told it?
Wow, well, listening to the story by the young boy in The Lost Boys reminds me a lot of storytellers. If we don't capture those words and we don't honor those words, they're lost forever. So for me, there once was a girl named Erin Gruell who believed that you could put down a fist and you could put down a gun and you could pick up a pen and leave a legacy. So I am proud to be a teacher who led 150 students to that place of capturing their voice. I walked in as a teacher and I left as their student. I learned lessons from them. So I think my story is about hope, and I think my story is about second chances, and it honors the words of other people, just like that young boy that was a lost boy, or just like Muhammad, who we all met tonight. So it's really about words and the power of those words leaving a legacy.
When was the time that you felt that you were at your lowest? When you thought your work was hopeless? When you felt like giving up?
That's a good question. I taught in a school where a lot of people didn't believe in my students, and that was really tough. So I felt very lonely and I felt very challenged. But I realized I'm not there for the other teachers, I was there for my students. So I just stopped going to the teacher's lounge and I stopped hearing some of that negative, those naysayers. I guess if I was young enough when Taylor Swift started singing songs like Shake It Off and Haters Gonna Hate, I probably could have sang songs and done a dance. But I just learned that it was more important to stay with my students, keep a positive attitude and not give up.
Anne Frank plays a big part in the Freedom Riders. What did you think about Anne Frank and the scene in The Fault in Our Stars?
That's a great. We are partners with the Anne Frank Center now, so I was really excited to know that they can incorporate Anne's story in such a great modern movie and a great book. I cried all the way through the movie. I'm sure you did too. But I'm so proud that that story that was almost 70 years ago is still relevant and still important, and that Anne was able to put a name and a face and an anecdote to a tragedy of 12 million. 1.5 million kids lost their lives in the Holocaust, and for her to be part of such an incredible movie and for them to pay homage to her, I think was really relevant. So I hope they encourage more kids to go back and to read her book and to learn about her legacy.
All right, thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
It was nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you. Nice talking to you.
And you.
Thank you.